It all began on a night I will never forget. A night that felt like the universe itself had conspired against me. The air was thick with an eerie stillness, and my heart pounded so loudly in my chest that it seemed to echo through the empty apartment. Suddenly, out of nowhere, a chilling voice emerged from the shadows, wrapping itself around me like an invisible chain. "You will speak nothing but the truth for the rest of your life," it declared, each word dripping with finality. I froze, my breath catching in my throat as panic surged through every nerve in my body. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what was happening. Was this some cruel joke? A hallucination brought on by stress or exhaustion? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. That voice, it wasn't human. It carried an otherworldly weight, one that pressed down on me until I could barely stand. And just like that, without warning, my freedom was stripped away. No more lies, no more hiding, no more protecting myself from the harsh realities of life. From that moment forward, every word I spoke would be forced into absolute honesty, whether I liked it or not. At first, I tried to convince myself it wasn't real. Maybe I'd imagined it. But reality quickly proved otherwise. When I opened my mouth to explain the situation to a friend the next morning, instead of sugarcoating things, I blurted out, "I think you're terrible at your job." The look of shock, and then anger, on their face confirmed my worst fears. The curse was real. Each sentence I uttered felt like walking on thin ice, knowing that at any moment I could shatter someone's feelings or my own life into pieces. The gravity of the situation hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a temporary inconvenience, it was a lifelong prison sentence. Every interaction became a minefield. How could I navigate relationships, work, friendships, or even casual conversations when every single thing I said had to be brutally honest? What if I accidentally hurt someone I cared about? Or worse, revealed something I wasn't supposed to? The thought alone made my stomach churn. And then there were the nights, the endless, sleepless nights where the memory of that haunting voice replayed over and over in my mind. "Nothing but the truth." Those words haunted me like a ghost, whispering in my ear whenever I dared to hope for a way out. I prayed for a miracle, for some loophole, anything to break free from this torment. But nothing came. Just the cold, suffocating grip of a curse that showed no mercy. The curse of truth-telling didn't just strip me of my ability to lie. It turned every interaction into a potential disaster. My first major fallout happened during an important client meeting. A man who had the arrogance of someone born with a silver spoon in his mouth and the ego to match. He sat across from me, puffing himself up like a peacock, flaunting his wealth as if it were some kind of divine right. When he tried to strong-arm us into accepting an unfair deal by throwing money around, something inside me snapped. I heard myself say, "You're nothing but a loser hiding behind your bank account." The room fell silent, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. His face turned red, veins bulging on his forehead, before he stormed out without another word. That single moment cost the company a multi-million-dollar contract. But the fallout didn't stop there. Word spread quickly about my blunt honesty, and soon clients began avoiding our firm altogether. My boss called me into her office, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Sam," she said through gritted teeth, "we can't afford any more slip-ups. This isn't just about losing one client, it's about survival." Survival, ha! If only she knew how impossible survival felt for me now. Then came the incident with the elderly neighbor. It was supposed to be a simple exchange, him asking about the weather, me nodding politely. But when he leaned closer, I blurted out, You smell like old socks soaked in sweat. His jaw dropped, and so did my reputation among the other neighbors. Within hours, whispers echoed through the building. She's rude, disrespectful, heartless. People avoided me like I carried a plague. Even those who once greeted me warmly now looked away or crossed the street to avoid making eye contact. Loneliness crept in like a shadow, growing darker each day. At work, things only worsened. My colleagues started treating me like a ticking time bomb. Every conversation became strained, every shared space uncomfortable. They whispered behind closed doors, terrified that I might expose their secrets, their unpaid debts, their failed marriages, their insecurities. One coworker even refused to sit next to me during lunch, claiming they needed fresh air. Fresh air? In this suffocating environment where everyone tiptoed around me, afraid of what I'd say next? Even Richard, my manager, wasn't spared. During a particularly heated argument over performance reviews, I snapped at him, calling him a miserable pervert for using his position to flirt with younger employees. His face turned pale, then beet red as he stammered, "You'll regret this!" But the damage was done. Office politics turned toxic overnight, and I found myself drowning in hostility. Each day felt like walking through a minefield. A casual comment could ignite chaos. At home, the walls seemed to close in on me. I couldn't escape the weight of my own words, or the consequences they brought. And yet, despite all the destruction, part of me wondered, was this curse truly a curse? Or was it forcing me to confront truths no one else dared to speak? Either way, the cost was unbearable. It was one of those nights when despair clung to me like a second skin. The weight of the curse had become unbearable, suffocating me with its relentless grip. I sat alone in my dimly lit apartment, tears streaming down my face as I stared at the eviction notice on the table. Just another cruel reminder of how far my life had spiraled out of control. My mind raced through all the mistakes I'd made, every harsh word that had slipped uncontrollably from my lips, and the people I'd alienated along the way. I felt utterly broken. Then there was a knock at the door. Through blurred vision, I saw him standing there. The neighbor who lived one floor above me. He held a small package wrapped neatly in brown paper and a bottle of wine tucked under his arm. "I thought you might need this," he said softly, offering both items with an almost hesitant smile. His presence startled me. No one ever came to see me anymore. Not after everything that had happened. We sat together in awkward silence for a moment before he extended the invitation. "Can we have a drink?" But even then, my cursed mouth betrayed me. Before I could stop myself, I blurted out, "You shouldn't waste your time on someone like me. You'll never stand a chance. I'm too wicked for anyone to love." The words hung heavy in the air, sharp and cutting, but they were true. Or so I believed. To my surprise, he didn't flinch or walk away. Instead, he leaned forward, his gaze piercing yet gentle. "Why do you keep pushing me away?" he asked, his voice steady despite the intensity behind it. "From the first moment I saw you, I saw something light within you. Something beautiful. But here you are, determined to convince yourself and everyone else that you're unworthy." His words struck me like lightning, illuminating parts of my soul I had long buried beneath layers of self-loathing. How dare he see something good in me? Didn't he understand what kind of person I really was? Yet deep inside, his declarations stirred something. A flicker of hope, perhaps, or maybe just confusion. Here was someone willing to look past my flaws, someone unafraid of the truth I couldn't hide. And yet, instead of feeling relieved, I felt more conflicted than ever. I don't know why I'm telling you this, I muttered, averting my eyes. Maybe because you're the only one left who hasn't run away screaming. He chuckled softly, though there was no mockery in it. And I'm not planning to leave anytime soon, he replied firmly. But if you think I'm going to let you push me away without a fight, you're wrong. For the first time in weeks, maybe months, I allowed myself to consider the possibility that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't entirely beyond redemption. Could someone truly accept me, flaws and all? Could this man, who seemed so unfazed by my brutal honesty, actually care for someone like me? The unraveling of my life reached its peak during a company meeting that was supposed to be routine but turned into a catastrophe. Surrounded by executives, clients, and colleagues, I found myself cornered when Richard, the same manager I had called a miserable pervert, pressed me about the company's recent failures. He wanted me to sugarcoat our shortcomings, to lie through my teeth for the sake of appearances, but lying wasn't an option anymore. Instead, the truth spilled out like venom, each word slicing through the room with precision. This company thrives on exploiting desperate women, I said, my voice trembling but firm. We manipulate them into deals they don't want, all while pretending to care. The silence that followed was deafening. My boss stared at me in disbelief, his face contorted with rage. One of the clients stood up abruptly, muttering something about unprofessional behavior before storming out. Within minutes, I was summoned to HR, where I was handed a termination letter. Just like that, my career crumbled into ashes. But losing my job was only the beginning of the avalanche. A few days later, as I returned to my apartment, an eviction notice greeted me at the door. It read, "Pay within 3 days or vacate the premises." 3 days. 72 hours. That was all the time I had left before I became homeless. Panic clawed at my chest as I realized the gravity of my situation. Without a job, I couldn't afford rent. Without rent, I had nowhere to go. Desperation consumed me, and I began rummaging through my belongings, searching for anything valuable enough to sell. My jewelry, books, even my grandmother's antique vase, everything went on the market. But no matter how much I sold, it wasn't enough. The numbers didn't add up. The debt loomed larger than ever. Each night I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing with worst-case scenarios. What would happen if I ended up on the streets? How could I survive without shelter, food, or support? The thought of being completely alone terrified me. Yet deep down, I knew I deserved this misery. Every harsh truth I had spoken over the past weeks had alienated me further from humanity. I had become untouchable, a pariah incapable of blending into society. One evening, as I sat surrounded by empty boxes filled with items ready to be sold, tears streamed down my face. I felt broken, defeated, and utterly hopeless. The man who lived above me, the neighbor who had once offered me wine and kind words, knocked on my door again. This time, he didn't bring gifts or invitations. His expression was somber as he watched me pack away my life piece by piece. "You're really doing this?" he asked softly. "Selling everything?" I nodded, unable to meet his gaze. "What choice do I have?" I whispered bitterly. "I'm drowning and there's no lifeline." He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a wad of cash. "Take this," he said, pressing it into my hand. I froze, stunned by his generosity. "Why are you helping me?" I demanded, my voice cracking under the weight of emotion. "Because someone has to," he replied simply. For a moment, I considered refusing, clinging stubbornly to what little pride I had left. But reality hit too hard, and I accepted the money, knowing it wouldn't solve everything. But it might buy me a little more time. Every night, as I lay in the dark, staring at the cracks on my ceiling, my mind wandered to a dream, a vision so vivid it almost felt real. A cozy house by the lake, bathed in golden sunlight, surrounded by tall trees swaying gently in the breeze. Inside, laughter echoed through the halls, children running barefoot, a dog wagging its tail, and him, a man who loved me despite everything. It was perfect. Too perfect. And every time I allowed myself to linger there, even for just a moment, reality came crashing down like a tidal wave. Who could ever love someone like me? I thought bitterly. Someone who can't stop saying things that cut deeper than knives? The idea of finding happiness seemed impossibly distant, like chasing stars in a pitch-black sky, when the neighbor, the same man who had shown me kindness during my darkest days, appeared again. Something inside me broke. We were standing in the hallway of our building, and before I knew it, tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. Imagine us having a family, I choked out, my voice trembling with emotion. But I know you'd never want that. Not with me. My confession hung heavily between us, raw and vulnerable. For once, I wasn't speaking because the curse forced me to. I was speaking because the weight of my longing was too much to bear alone. He didn't respond immediately. Instead, he looked at me with an intensity that made my heart race. His silence only deepened my despair. Was he disgusted by my honesty? Did he pity me? Or worse, did he agree? Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. "Why do you keep assuming the worst about yourself?" he asked softly. "Do you really believe no one could see past your flaws?" His question hit me like a punch to the gut. Of course I believed it. How could anyone overlook the damage I caused? The lives I ruined? The people I hurt with my unfiltered truth? Yet instead of arguing or defending myself, I found myself breaking further. "Because it's true," I shouted, my voice cracking under the strain. "No matter how hard I try, I destroy everything I touch. Even now, dreaming of something as simple as a family feels like a cruel joke." For the first time, I saw anger flash across his face, not directed at me, but at the world that had convinced me I was unworthy. "Stop punishing yourself," he said firmly. "You're allowed to dream, Samantha. You're allowed to hope. Hope." That word struck a chord within me, resonating painfully against the walls I had built around my heart. Could I truly allow myself to hope? To believe that maybe, just maybe, I wasn't beyond redemption? But the more I considered it, the more terrified I became. What if I let myself fall for him, only to have my curse ruin everything? What if I ended up hurting him too? "I don't deserve this," I whispered, shaking my head. "Not the dream, not you, none of it." "And who gets to decide what you deserve?" he challenged, stepping closer until we were mere inches apart. "Because from where I'm standing, you deserve every bit of happiness you've ever dreamed of." His words ignited a spark within me, fragile yet undeniable. They clashed violently with the storm of self-loathing that had consumed me for so long. In that moment, I realized how deeply entrenched my fear of rejection had become. I wanted to push him away, to protect both of us from the inevitable pain, but I couldn't bring myself to move. Not when he looked at me like that, like I was worth saving. The air between us was electric, charged with unspoken truths and raw vulnerability. I stood there, trembling, as the weight of my past pressed down on me like a leaden cloak. How could he possibly look at me? The woman who had spent years lying to survive, manipulating to get by, and see anything worth saving. Yet his gaze never wavered. It was steady, unwavering, filled with something I hadn't dared to hope for: acceptance. "You've told me everything," he said finally, his voice soft but firm, cutting through the storm raging inside me. "And that means more to me than any lie ever could." His words hit me like a tidal wave, pulling me under and forcing me to confront the truth I'd been running from. Not everyone would turn away when they saw the real me. Some might stay, some might even fight for me. But before I could fully process what he was saying, he took it a step further. "I'm not perfect either," he admitted, his expression softening into something almost vulnerable. "I've made mistakes, big ones, things I'm not proud of. But none of that matters now. What matters is where we go from here. Together." His honesty stunned me. For so long, I had carried the burden of my sins alone, convinced that no one else could or should bear them. And yet here he was, standing beside me, sharing his own scars without hesitation. In that moment, I realized how much courage it must have taken for him to open up like that. Courage I wasn't sure I possessed. Then, as if sensing my inner turmoil, he reached out and took my hand in his. The warmth of his touch sent shivers racing up my spine. "Samantha," he began, his voice thick with emotion, "I want a family, children, a dog, a house by the lake, and I want all of it. With you." Time seemed to stop. My breath caught in my throat as his words sank in, each syllable wrapping around my heart like a lifeline. Could this really be happening? Could someone truly love me? Not despite my flaws, but because of them? "I don't deserve you," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Not after everything I've done." He shook his head, squeezing my hand gently. "Stop deciding what you deserve. Let me decide. Let us decide." For the first time in years, maybe ever, I allowed myself to believe that happiness wasn't just a distant dream. It was within reach. All I had to do was take it. At first, the curse felt like a cruel punishment, a relentless force stripping me of control over my own life. Every word I spoke became a weapon, cutting through facades and exposing raw truths that left destruction in their wake. But as days turned into weeks, something unexpected began to emerge from the chaos: clarity. The curse, which had once seemed like an unbreakable chain, slowly revealed itself as a mirror, a harsh but necessary reflection of who I truly was and what I had endured. I learned to confront the pain I had buried deep within myself. Each truth I spoke forced me to face not only others' flaws, but also my own complicity in the life I had built. It wasn't easy. In fact, it was excruciating. But with every confession, I felt a little lighter, as if layers of shame were being peeled away. For the first time, I understood that healing could only begin when I stopped running from the person I saw in the mirror. Acceptance, not perfection, was the key to finding peace. The turning point came during a chance encounter with Richard, my former manager. He approached me one evening outside a cafe, his usual smug demeanor masking whatever agenda he carried. "You've caused quite the mess," he sneered, his tone dripping with condescension. "Do you even realize how much damage you've done?" His words stung, but instead of shrinking back, I stood tall, meeting his gaze head-on. "I've endured enough," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "Enough of your manipulations. Enough of bending to other people's wills just to survive. From now on, I'll live my life on my terms." My declaration hung in the air, sharp and unyielding, and for a moment we simply stared at each other. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away, leaving me standing there, heart pounding but resolute. In that moment, I realized the curse had given me more than just pain. It had given me freedom. The freedom to stop pretending, to stop hiding behind lies or societal expectations. And while the journey ahead would undoubtedly be fraught with challenges, I knew I was no longer afraid. I had faced the darkest parts of myself and emerged stronger because of it. The moment hung suspended in time, fragile and electric. I stood before him, trembling with uncertainty, my heart pounding like a war drum. His eyes locked onto mine, unwavering and tender, as if he could see every fear, every scar etched into my soul. "Kiss me," he whispered, his voice barely audible yet resonating through the silence like thunder. My breath hitched, caught between the weight of my past and the promise of something new. Was this it? The turning point where everything changed, or just another beginning fraught with challenges? Every instinct screamed at me to pull away, to protect myself from the inevitable pain that always seemed to follow hope. But then I remembered his words. "I don't care about your past." For once, someone wasn't running. Someone stayed. I hesitated for what felt like an eternity before finally leaning in. Our lips met in a kiss that was both hesitant and profound, sealing something unspoken between us. And as the world faded around us, one question lingered. Had the curse truly lifted? Or was this simply the start of a new journey? One where truth remained my companion, but love became my guide. Some people leave scars, others leave lessons. Burn and reborn stories that break you, then rebuild you.